Hey guys, we're back with another episode of International Survivor, and we've got with us today Pia Miranda, the Sicilian, the smiling assassin, the winner of Champions vs. Contenders 2. Pia, how have you been since the show has aired over in Australia?
I've been great, thank you. Well, obviously, I was really lucky when I won. I promised the kids when I left that if I won, I would take them to Disneyland, and so I was so lucky that I took them in 2019 because we were tossing up between like end of 2019 or mid 2020. So I got to take them to Disneyland. So that was a nice thing. And then, yeah, like everyone else, I just sat out COVID. So it's nice to be out and about.
Yeah, 100%. And you're over in Melbourne, Victoria, which for those people who are not from Australia or New Zealand probably wouldn't know that Melbourne had some of the most severe lockdowns in Australia over the last year, way worse than any of the New Zealand areas or any other states over in Australia. So glad that you guys got out of it on the other end, and that, especially for someone like yourself, I'm sure like being out on the island, we constantly had that social interaction. It would have been pretty torturous.
It was very weird because there's a sense of isolation, obviously, out on the island, and then to come back and sort of go through it all again for a lot longer, though. We had, I think, over 100 days where we were pretty much stuck in the house 23 hours a day, and we could just do 1 hour of exercise within 5K. So that's a long time. So it was really weird because I went, God, if I didn't go through enough in 2019, I think I'd go through something else in 2020. But, I had roof and food, so at least I could appreciate that.
Yeah, that's great. Now, Pia, I learned something completely new about you when I was doing a quick bit of a research, and it made me even like you even more. Like, I liked you already as a player, but I even like you more. Me and you, we both share the same birthday. So we're both 15th of June.
15th yes. of June, middle day of the middle month of the middle of the year. That's so cool. Oh, happy birthday, June.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm hoping that that's a good omen if I ever do get casted in one of these shows. That if we're in the same star sign, we're both Geminis. So we've got those split personalities. We can act being happy with people and do what needs to be done on the other side, like you said throughout the whole show.
Yeah, we can be duplicitous without us feeling bad about it because it's who we are deep inside.
Exactly. Now, Pia, I kind of noticed not that long ago, as you sort of mentioned, you've seen a couple of our recaps. I'm focusing on International Survivor, and I'm doing a lot of recaps for Survivor South Africa recently. So I've been following a lot of the Survivor South Africa players. I noticed that you tweeted out at some of the Survivor South African players not that long ago that you were watching the Survivor South African seasons as well. How's that going at the moment? Are you enjoying it?
So good. I tweeted out, and then I was about to start. We get season 6 and 7 free on one of our TV apps. So I tweeted out that I wanted to watch it. I started season 7, and everyone told me to watch season 6. So I'm final 5 of season 6 right now.
Okay. So, yeah. No, it's a good.
I'm loving it. It's kind of, I don't know. I find it very old school in the editing style. I really appreciate the lack of Frankenbites that they tend to sort of not try and, I feel like they're not trying to edit for drama. They're just actually editing a really good Survivor story. And I think the casting is amazing. The people, I love and hate everyone in the best possible way on that show, which is what you're meant to do, right? You're meant to love and hate people at the same time. I'd be happy for anyone to win. I'm really enjoying it. I can't wait to get the kids in bed. So I'm watching it on the treadmill at the moment too.
That's awesome. Now, I will warn you, if you start watching season 7, don't watch our recaps of it, because it's kind of a rewatch recap of it before you've watched the whole season, because a lot of spoilers are being discussed throughout that. And we've got a lot of the players who've come on the show, but they talk freely about what happened on the show. So definitely watch the whole of season 7 first before you even go and watch any of our stuff, if you do want to watch it in the future. Now, that's awesome. Now, Pia, I also wanted to ask you, obviously you're getting into the South African franchise. You mentioned when you got onto the show that you were a big Survivor fan before you got onto the show. And I wanted to know, was that mainly the Australian Survivor franchise, or did you watch the US seasons as well?
No, I've been watching the US season since it began. So really 2000, I came in early days, was very early obsessed with it. And my friend Tom and I, used to have little Survivor parties, and then we brought our respective partners. When we met our partners, we brought them into this little thing. And actually my friend Tom was on my list of people to come over if someone couldn't make it. So I'm kind of bummed he didn't get to come. But yeah, I'm an old school Survivor fan, and back in the day when it used to be VHS, you used to have VHS tapes. What we'd do is I would tape every single episode, and then especially if we traveled or something, and then I'd put my husband and I would put a double bed mattress in the lounge room, and I'd lie there for 3 days and I wouldn't move, and I just watched Survivor.
Does your husband share that love? Does he love the show as well?
He's a little patchy on it now because I think he's lived through it. But so I was watching South African last night, and I felt like he was a little triggered. But, I loved it, and I always used to say it's the only thing I've ever watched where I'm like, I could win this, and I break down what everyone should be doing, and I had a real passion for it.
Was there like any Survivor player that you've watched in the past play the show that you sort of thought, if I get out there and I play the show, I would try and emulate the type of game plan that they had going into the show? Because obviously I know when you get out there, things change pretty quickly. But prior to the show, was there someone you wanted to sort of emulate?
I mean, I really wanted to be as likable as Colleen, but that never happened. Because I was too cutthroat. But I really liked. Obviously, I read a lot about of Sandra's gameplay. So I mean, it's pretty obvious when you watch my gameplay that a lot of my methods were, I'd think about making a move, and then I'd realize that it's just not me tonight, and I'd go, well, anyone but me. I always had that anyone but me thing in my head. But I really loved the one thing that I took with me, and I don't know whether I used any of it. I think I did, in the sense that I made sure I made real relationships with people, but those relationships would never get in the way of me cutting someone. I love that the 2 Cochrane seasons, I found the change in his gameplay from the first season when he didn't do great to the second season. I really sort of took some of those lessons into the game with me. But you can think you're going to be one thing, and then you can't predict who you're going to be on the tribe with. And if you've really got to follow your personality and how you fit into that group. So you might go out there and think, yeah, I'm going to play this really alpha, fun, crazy game. But if there's 5 other crazy people there, you've got to find your place and work out how people relate to you. And you just can't predict that.
No, 100%. And it's interesting you mentioned Sandra there, which is, Sandra is universally loved by the Survivor, I think, super fandom in any case, in regards to the fact that she was the first person to win the show twice. I don't know if you have heard any of the discussions that we had with Harry not that long ago, but myself and Adam. So Adam Jumba, he's from the US. He started the channel with a bunch of us that are friends. And he used to work on the Russell Hahn show quite closely with Russell Hahn, and he also works with Netflix at the moment. So he's got a couple of things that he's doing behind the scenes, and he never watched any Australian Survivor season prior to watching this one, because I kind of forced him to watch it and do a couple of recaps with me, and he made the comparison that this season was very much like Pearl Island, which is one of his favorite seasons that he's ever watched, and he said that you reminded him of Sandra, Harry reminded him of Johnny Fairplay, Luke Toki was kind of like Rupert but a little bit more game savvy, but he was this lovable character, so have you heard that comparison made before?
No, but that makes absolute sense. Absolutely. I think even though obviously Harry really, he sort of played this very sweet, lovable game, there was a little bit of Johnny Fairplay in him, obviously with the Oscar story. And yeah, I really did. I read a lot about Sandra's gameplay before I went out. Janine read a lot about what to pack, and she packed perfectly. I packed like poo. But I read nonstop how to win. And I just thought, I had a feeling that Sandra's gameplay would relate to my personality type.
Yeah, so you touched on 2 things there that I really want to ask you a little bit more about. So one of it's Harry with the Oscars story. How quickly were you guys onto him when he started talking about this? It's hard to gauge on the episodes how quickly you guys actually knew something was off.
Maybe day 2. So the first day it was pretty fine. And then Sean was a bit like, I don't know if Oscar's real. And so then we would, especially Janine and I, would go and ask him questions. I'd be like, hey, what does Oscar eat? And he went, just plain stuff. I'm like, what does he like to do? Draw. What does he draw? Because I've got a kid, I had a kid of similar age. It's like squiggles. And they were like, he doesn't. But I very early got along very well with Harry, even though it doesn't sort of show that much in the edit. We really get along, and we still remain very close. I got along with Harry early on, so I found all that stuff really quite funny.
There was something about the way that he did what he did where you knew it wasn't malicious. It all came out of a fun place, and I think that's what made him a lovable villain, because even your Johnny Fairplay, in a lot of ways, when he played the game, he was still a lovable villain as well, because we were in on the joke when he was talking to the cameras, you know what I mean? So Harry sometimes had that same kind of way, but Harry's probably even more lovable, actually a lot more lovable even than Johnny Fairplay. So a really, really great character in the Australian show. Now, the second part that I wanted to touch on, just based off that little bit of sort of info that you gave me there, was Janine. Now, obviously, you and Janine worked really closely throughout of the whole game, and that alliance, I actually went on the recap that we did for your season one of it, and I said, I think that you were probably in the strongest trio and the most balanced trio I've ever seen in between yourself, Abby, and Janine, because you guys balanced each other so well. You had that social game. Janine was the person in front of you that was sort of taking a lot of the hits, making a lot of the strategic moves, but everybody saw her. And then you had Abby, who was the physical, sporty athlete. I'm quite interested to know if you had a game plan in mind for how you would sort of talk to the jury, because your final jury speech was really good. How would you have sort of combated Janine in a final tribal to say what your gameplay was compared to hers, because she was so out there where everybody saw it, where you potentially was a little bit more behind the scenes? Did you have a game plan in mind if you were to go to the end with her? And secondly, were you planning on going to the end with her?
Oh, well, initially, yes, I was. I was never planning on going to the end with Abby. And especially after Abby won the car, I really realized that I needed to get her out quickly. And it didn't come to fruition because I obviously did the Dave blindside, and then I knew I had to lay low for maybe 2 votes. And then I was going to try and get Abby out. And there was a few opportunities, but then I got on the bottom and I couldn't do anything. With Janine, initially, yes. So initially when I met Janine, I targeted her because I thought, oh, great, this is a woman with a lot of money. No one's going to give her the cash. And I felt like, we worked really well together. And then as we got further into the game, I realized that unless I was starting to try and make alliances without her, which I'd let her in on because we just have one of those really good relationships where there was no point I didn't need to lie to her. I could say, look, I'm working on something with Simon and Jono. And I was really thinking about working with Simon and Jono to get Abby out, but then things change and you've got to do stuff. And so I thought, as long as I make a move without her, I'll be fine. But as it got closer to the end and then I got on the bottom, I realized that going to the end with Janine was not going to be the best. But we've chatted about it, and I said, even if I had to have voted her out, I wouldn't ever have lied to her about it. And she would have been okay. We had one of those really truthful relationships where I was really cutthroat with anyone, but I wouldn't have gone behind her back and done something.
Now, another question that I have around that alliance, especially after the swap, you were there with Ross and Simon, and obviously Ross sadly got injured. Great character, someone that I loved seeing on the show, and I think everybody is with me that we didn't want to see him go out of the game that way. And, I don't know if he'd ever played again, but we'd all love to see him. He's just a larger-than-life character on the show, and I thought he brought so much to the TV show. My question is more about Simon and sort of where Simon fitted into that alliance, specifically when you guys went to the merge, because Simon had a very quiet edit throughout the show. It was really hard to gauge where his head was at strategically. And I was kind of wondering, how high up in the hierarchy was he really for you guys when you went into the merge? And did he actually sort of wiggle his way on top of like Luke and David when you guys met up again? And were you sort of planning to take him quite deep into the game with you?
Yes, definitely. So a lot of my time on Contenders Camp was, I do a lot of the hard yards at night. So I'd sit up at night with Ross and I'd sit up with Simon, and Simon and I we bonded a lot over our kids. And once we got to merge, Janine and I had a chat, and I said, I really, really want to take Simon to the end. And so I was looking for a way my ideal was to get Simon and then someone else who, I knew I could beat. And then things changed. I was really everything sort of fell apart around the spa. We came back and we knew something was wrong, and Simon and I just couldn't get Abby to change her mind. But he was absolutely sort of final 3 for me because he played a good game, but I knew he'd be an easy beat.
Yeah, 100%. He seemed like a really nice guy, but maybe someone that didn't fully appreciate the intricacies of the show, because there's a lot of little intricacies in the show in regards to playing the social game, being physical, also having some like I felt like he lost a lot of his allies early on, like the people that probably would have stuck with him. And that sort of takes me to one of your biggest moves in the game, which was probably right at the start of the game, and that was saving yourself when you were at the bottom and sort of destined to go home in that first spot. And you said that, you always felt like you were someone that was either going to go home first or you're going to win the whole show, which is something that I think I can relate to because I feel exactly the same. And a lot of other fans feel exactly the same, that we probably, and especially for me, because I'm quite opinionated, so I probably will get out pretty quickly if people didn't want to play with me. But, that specific point was really sort of a masterstroke by you, because a lot of other players, they die in that situation and they don't fight to stay in the game. I was really impressed by that, but I was even more impressed by the fact, after you convinced the strong sort of sporty alliance to keep you, you went back to the people that voted against you. Can you talk us through how you came to the decision that you needed to go back to them, and sort of, what made you forgive people so easily? Because Luke, when he was on the show as well, he said that that's one of your strengths on the show as well, is the fact that you can forgive and forget and move on. You don't hold things against people if it didn't work out against you in the previous round.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think because you never know where someone might vote against you, but if you act cool, calm, and collected, they might be your best ally in the next vote. And the minute you lose the plot, red flags are going to go up. No one's going to want to play with you. Luke did the same thing when we voted out Dave. He just was like, I'm good. It happens in the game. So for me, I really actually played 2 sides so hard after I talked Nova and Susie into getting Anastasia out. So what happened that day when I was going home was that I knew it was me. Like, you just know. I knew it was me. And I'm like, God, I've been watching this for 20 years. This is humiliating. And I heard everyone talking about Susie and getting Susie out, but I knew they were just saying that because I was there. So then I ran down to Susie and Nova, and I'm like, all of a sudden pretended to be Susie's best friend. And Susie and Nova and I had gotten along very well. I'd been really working on them. So I was like, Susie, they're talking about voting you out. This is terrible. And that got Nova on side because she loves Susie, and it all sort of changed there. And then the next day, when all that transpired, Janine was acting really weird with me the next day. And I thought, oh, this chick hates me. What am I going to do? So I went up and I'm like, hey, how you doing? And she's like, fine. And then I said, oh, thanks for not voting me out. And she went, I did. No, thanks for voting me last night. I did. And then I started laughing and I was like, my God, that's hilarious. And then we bump into Luke and he's like, what are you laughing about? I said, she tried to vote me out last night. He said, so did I. And then we 3 of us started laughing. And then from that point, the 3 of us were standing around the well and we had a chat. And then he's like, we should talk to Dave, because Dave was kind of out of it on the vote. He's not really in that gang. And the 4 of us got together and then we were like, okay, this is the alliance of 4. Let's flip 2. And that's kind of how it happened. So it was easy. It's Survivor. When I went into Survivor, I thought, I'm not going to care about what anyone says about me or what they do. I'm just going to let it roll off my back, because that's the game. And if you play the game like that, the game's not hard. I mean, the game's hard. The actual, the wheeling and dealing and doing stuff behind your back never got to me.
Now, you mentioned that you were a fan of the show. I'm assuming you also watched the Australian seasons before you went on to Australia. How did you feel about playing with Luke on the beach? Like when you noticed that there was a previous player coming back, and he obviously had a bit of a reputation for playing a game that wasn't sort of, it was a wild card game the first season that he played. How did you feel about playing with him there? And who else as well that you played with on that Champions Tribe were you a little bit intimidated by, or just in awe of being out there? I know you were famous in your own right, but obviously when you meet other people that you've never met before, who else there sort of were like you thought, these are going to be big competitors for me in the game?
Well, the funny thing about the Luke season is I was working when that season was on, and then I caught up on that season at the gym. They would do this replay thing 12 o'clock or something in the day. I caught up on that season after he got voted out, so I never saw him. So everyone else was telling me about this guy, but they were making him out to be way more sort of ruthless and cutthroat and untrustworthy than he was. And I found him to be, up to a point, up until final 6, when we really turned on each other. I found him to be, you know, pretty, I could sort of read him quite well. So I think I was very wary of him. And I know the first day when I was trying to save myself, it was really complicated because everyone was telling me that he was going around camp telling everyone that I was not to be trusted because I was talking to too many people. But then he was the one who said, "It's you, go down and save yourself." So it was kind of a complicated relationship from start to finish between the two of us, actually. So yeah, in a weird way, I was wary of him, but then we got along really well really quickly, and I sort of let that all go. I thought he's going to be the kind of guy that's going to be my best friend until merge, and then I'll have to reconsider this relationship. And then as far as the champs, I think I recognize quite a few people, obviously Nova and Susie and a lot of the sports people, but I wasn't really prepared for, I'm from like a drama club sort of vibe, so we're very self-deprecating. I mean, there's not one sing-along around the campfire. I just found that weird. You know, it's just a weird, we do sing-alongs around the campfire. People sat around the campfire and talk about their achievements. And I found that I didn't fit into that kind of crowd. Sports people are very confident, and that was quite sort of, I didn't know how to keep up with those conversations. Whereas actors will sit around and talk about, you know, how much they suck. Whereas sports people really are like, well, I did this and I did this, and I'm, you know, my achievements are these sorts of things. So so I think the sports people I was a little in awe of, in a way that I just felt like I pretty much recognized all of them, but I knew I wasn't going to fit in with them.
And sort of going into the season, were you recruited to come on the show? Did they come and search for people that were like champions or like famous people that they could bring into the show? Or did you apply for the show directly?
I had done an interview. I was doing a TV show and I'd done an interview on one of those TV blogs. And it was really weird because it was like a Q&A. And one of the questions was, what's your favorite show? What's your guilty secret? And I wrote Survivor. Yeah. And then he said, what show, if anything, would you want to be on if you could be on anything? And I'd written something quite highbrow because I felt like that's what was expected of me. And then it was, you know, at the end of the year when it was New Year's Eve or something, you're like, no, fuck it. I'm going to just write what I think. And I wrote, I want to be on Survivor because blah, 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 blah. And then, you know, the next week they called me. I was like, no, I actually want to do this. I like food a lot.
Another thing we've got in common then. So I was going to say, with obviously going onto the show, you know, your husband quite late in the season came on there to sort of shout you on when you were in the final challenge, which went on for quite a long time. I believe it's still a record right now for the longest immunity challenge. He mentioned that you're someone in life that sometimes don't put yourself out there to do these types of challenges, but he always knew that you would do well if you actually got on the show. Has your sort of outlook on life and how you approach things changed quite a lot since the show? Or is it kind of like a lot of things like New Year's resolutions, you say, I'm going to change things, but then you go back to normal life and you don't take those lessons with you? Because you obviously, you know, you went on there and did better than what most people have done. There's only a handful of people in the world that can say they've ever won the show of Survivor. Yeah,
I think it really, it taught me that I was stronger than I thought. I struggled definitely mentally in the first week and a half, just with missing my family. I'm a real homebody. I got little kids, and I'd struggled mentally, and to feel myself push through that and do all those things. I hate heights. There's a lot of stuff I did that I never thought I would do. And I think also, you know, people were really encouraging. I know Simon's such a wonderful person. And to be honest, better player than they gave him credit for in the edit, like way better player. But Simon, Janine, you know, people would really give me confidence in the sense that I was constantly pushing myself past my limits and saying it was really exciting to watch, because I just said to myself, And I've taken this into my life now. I said to myself, if I go out there, if I can't do something, I'm not going to say I can't. I'm just going to push until I can. And so, there were times when I'd do a challenge, like jumping off the high thing, when I just wanted to cry and say I can't. And feeling myself do that has definitely helped me in my life. And nothing feels hard. You're on a 5K run. You're like, can I do another K? Yeah, I can. I want to survive. Or I was on set the other day and I hurt myself. I banged myself on the head because I'm really suck at doing stunts. And everyone's like, are you okay? And there's that sense of like, I'm fine, guys. Whereas before I would be like, is it bad? Does it hurt? There's a strength, there's a physical and mental strength that you get from playing that game that, is really wonderful. And trauma as well. So it's a lovely balance, you're traumatized for life, but you're also given this wonderful gift.
Yeah, 100%. I want to sort of touch on something you just mentioned there, being on set and all of that. So it's maybe not 100% Survivor related, but obviously you played in the Looking for Alibrandi way back in the day, and that was probably your biggest success early on in life when it came to fame. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not from Australia, so I didn't actually know who a lot of the players were. If they didn't play rugby union, I don't really know AFL all that well. I don't know league that well. It's not something that's in South Africa. It's only union over there. But, this sort of put you back on the map for a lot of people and brought a lot of other projects back to you after the show. Has it been positive for you in that sense, or has it always been sort of the same in regards to the opportunities that you've been getting over there to act and play in certain roles?
I don't know. It was weird because once it aired, we went into a year-long lockdown, and so I was stuck inside. So I haven't really seen any changes. Definitely, obviously, my public profile went up quite a lot. And, I had a mixed time on the show. So I was concerned for a couple of weeks afterwards, is this going to be good or bad? And it turned out okay. So, I think it's a funny thing. I think it's opened people's eyes to the sense that I'm different to what they expected that I was. I was definitely sort of had more of a sweetheart reputation, and now it's more of a complicated reputation, which I like. People sort of get very excited when I walk on set now, which is really nice. They're like, holy shit, you did that. So I think, it'll take time for me to work out where it's going to lead me, but it's definitely brought opportunities about for me where, if I want to get in a room or if I want to, I have a little project that I'm working on, it's definitely made it much easier for me to get that up and running, whereas beforehand, probably not.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, what was the fan reception like in general? Because obviously you made that massive move to take Luke Toki out, who we all know is Australia's favourite player. He is the Rupert of the Australian Survivor season. What was the fan reception like after that? Has it been positive, mixed, negative on your end? How have you felt? Because obviously we probably hear more of the negative sometimes than the positive. And for people who are true fans of the show, I think no one really, I don't blame you. I think it was the best move you made in the whole game was to cut Luke at the end there. That's what won you the show.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of salty about the edit of that. So it was complicated for me for a while because, in the edit, they show him going to Baden and then coming to me and me being like his great white hope. But in truth, he went to me first and we have this big chat on the beach. And I have that moment where I think, because we just wanted him out for so long and he kept winning immunities. And then I had that moment, which I would have had with anyone, because that final four was so lovely, where I thought, I can't write someone off at final four. That's not fair. We've all worked so hard to get here. I owe it to that person to think of them as a possibility. So he'd spoken to me first. And at the end of that conversation, he said, now I'm going to go talk to Baden and try and get him to send you to fire. And I was like, this guy, come on. And then I went, fine, I'm going to go talk to Harry. So then I went and talked to Harry, but I guess in the edit, they wanted to set it up. Unfortunate for me, they wanted to set it up as this sort of other story. And I guess they hadn't put in the week before when I was sort of Toki's number one target. So it was more of a complicated relationship, which I think was probably more interesting for TV. It would have been sad anyway, seeing him go. But yeah, it was. And then, that day as well, I kept thinking, if Harry gets rid of me, he wins. He would have won because Luke was so fantastic at those multi-layered immunity challenges, but he was not an endurance performer in challenges and he had a bad shoulder. And so I was really scared that whole day, because I thought if Harry, because Harry kept joking about sending me to fire, I thought if Harry sends me out, he's got 2 chances at winning, and they're pretty good chances. If he keeps me, he's got 1. He has to win that last challenge, because Baden and I were very much had promised each other final 2. We were doing Auslan in tribal council. So if you look at that final 4, when Baden's really scared I'm going to send her to fire, he's staring at me like this, like, but you can't see him doing that. So it was complicated, and I think I felt sort of a bit annoyed at the edit, but then I didn't feel like I could defend myself publicly, because you're not allowed to talk about production for 3 months. And so I really wanted my money. I was really scared that if I I wouldn't give you my money. So it was really yucky. It was yucky. It's really yucky when you're going through something like that and you're like, well, I don't feel well represented in this situation, but you can't say anything. So it was probably 50-50. It was actually a really bad 48 hours. And then once I won, obviously the tide turned and everyone was fine. But it was awful. And I just found the whole edit of that episode really gross. It was like, it would have been sad anyway, but the way they pitted my kids against his kids and made it out like we were best friends, it was awful. It was awful to watch. And I can't say I'll ever be forgiving of that, putting me in that situation.
No, 100%. And it's interesting you mentioned this, because, the first time I watched the season, I noticed that, obviously that's the way it was portrayed, and it was harder to digest. And then the second and the third time, every time I watched your season, my opinion of your win has just gone up and up. Not that I didn't think you weren't a deserving winner the first time I watched it, but it was between you or Luke at the end there. That's the way that the show was edited. If you didn't cut him, you wouldn't have won. You went onto the show to win the money. I mean, no one goes there to get second or third or fourth place. So I think it was a brilliant move by you. And I think that anybody who really understands the game of Survivor will definitely agree. And I know that Australian Survivor has gone through a couple of seasons now where you had a lot of mateship in the first couple of seasons. And then your season, to me, I rate higher than All Stars, personally. I really loved your season because I thought you had so many interesting characters in your season. And for the longest period of time, there were many people who could have won the show in the edit, which I really appreciated. I feel like All Stars, we kind of knew by early merge who was going to win that. It was very one-sided, the editing on that show. So hats off to you for doing that. And then the other really big move here for me as well in the merge was again, going back to Luke Toki, when you convinced Luke to play an advantage that basically helped you get to that final 4 position, how long did you work on Luke to potentially help you in that situation? And also, did you sort of have an inkling that he potentially had an idol or something in his pocket that made you want to work that hard on actually getting him on side?
Yeah, it's funny when you're out there, you just know when people have stuff. So I always thought it was an idol. I thought he had an idol. And I'd been working on him for a while because Abby had been telling me she wanted him out. And I was laser focused on getting Abby out. So I was just in his ear going, she wants you out, I want her out. So who do you want to play with? And there were 2 things going on at that final 5. So one was I just kept working on him, and I assumed that, and he told me, he said, finally told me I've got something. And I assumed that he was going to play his idol for me. We were going to put our votes on Abby, and then he would play his idol for me. And then we would see, even if, and actually before that too, I kept saying to him, so it's final 5. If you lose immunity, I will help you. I don't want you gone. I want Abby gone. So let's work together and get Abby gone. So we had that double thing going on. The other thing about that final 5 is that all Baden, Luke, and I wanted Abby out. So it was actually 3 against 2. But I was like, I had 2 plans. So I had the Luke plan, which, I mean, he was so clever. He bamboozled me, and he neutered Baden and I, just neutered us, like really just cut our balls off. But I had been talking to Baden. I knew he wanted Abby out, but Baden was playing this very funny game where he was just dobbing on everyone, so you couldn't tell him anything. So I was a little bit excited before that tribal because I thought if the Luke plan doesn't go ahead, I'm going to throw Abby under the bus. and just be like, did you see her in that car challenge? She is going to win this game. Like, she's going to win it. You cannot take her to final 3 because she's going to win that final 3 challenge and then she's going to win the game. And I knew, and you can check with Baden, but he wanted her out. I knew that it was really going to be 3 against 2. And I'd also been telling Luke, I said, the reason why Harry wants to keep Abby in is to beat you at challenges. That's the only reason they're keeping her in. And so I had sort of that going on, and I felt pretty confident going into that tribal council that I was going to be okay, but I didn't know how it was going to work. But the one thing, I mean, I really wasn't scared to take Luke to final 3. I just wanted him out, because I thought he was probably an easy beat in an endurance challenge. But I think in doing that amazing, like, bamboozling tribal, which was such great television, which is such a Toki move, I think what he should have done was let me in on what was going on, because even though I had a second plan, I was so tired. I just would have gone with the easy option. And I think he should have asked for my assurance on the next vote, because he knows what I'm like. And if he had have said, I'll play this for you if you send Baden to fire, I would have stuck to that. But he didn't. So I was like, well, free agent. But I think in hindsight, he could have known that that's something I wouldn't have turned my back on that if I'd made a promise.
Now, we haven't touched on the other really big character of the season and someone that came back in All-Stars and obviously joined your winners club, Dave. Dave, very early on in the season, yourself and Janine and Abby were onto his game. You were saying he was playing too aggressive. You had that moment where Dave created a fake idol and he gave the fake idol to Sean, which is a bit of a dirty move, but us as fans, we love seeing it. Now, how quickly after he did that, did Janine let you in on what was happening? Because Janine obviously was aware of it from the start. He needed Janine's help to have her clue so that he could wrap his fake clue in it to make it look a little bit more authentic. Did Janine tell you guys about this quite early after that happened, or did she wait until you guys swapped over to a tribe that Sean was with? Because I know that she let Sean in on it at that stage.
I knew about the whole thing the whole time. So Abby didn't, but I knew when Janine found the idol. I knew, I was in on the plan with Janine and Dave the whole time. So I knew that was going on. And we found it quite funny. But there was also a bit of fear because you're thinking, well, Dave's just kind of stolen Janine's idol. So we were just lucky that we got to contenders camp and that idol worked out. But I was in on that plan the whole time. I mean, not in on Dave's plan, but I knew what was going on. But I mean, even knowing it was just such a funny, as a Survivor fan, seeing someone do that is just, you go, I can't believe I'm living this. You know what I mean? I can't believe he was actually making a fake idol and swapped it. It was just joy. It was a joyous moment for me.
Now, your final tribal performance was masterful because you had someone like David there saying, that, in his mind, you both, didn't really deserve to be there. And you immediately shot back on that really well and talked about your game and convinced him otherwise. Even when he was voting, he said, you completely deserved it. Did David come back to you at any stage to get some tips before you went back for All-Stars? Because he did change his game quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. You should see my WhatsApp with Dave. It was, you could do this it was days and days. And because you know what? I absolutely love Dave. He's a fantastic person. He's a narcissist, but the best kind of narcissist. He's the kind of person that he really would be there for you if something went wrong. And so I really wanted him to win. And so we had a WhatsApp thing, and it was actually Janine and Dave and I. And I said to him, if you find 2 women, you got to tell them the same thing because they're going to tell each other. So you can't be telling if people are in a group. And I said, fine. And we were like, find some more mature women, stick with them, and you'll get to the end. So, and just be more low key. I said, stay as crazy as you are in the interviews, but just be more low key around camp because he's he's great. He really wanted to win and he deserves to win. And he's such a good egg.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the fandom loves Dave as a winner, definitely. And it's interesting you mentioned that you mentioned that he should get more mature women because in the beginning, he was sort of being singled out with all the younger women within the tribe. He had Daisy there, obviously, who he didn't feel like he could trust too long in the game. He had Brooke, he had Phoebe, a lot of the younger girls there that he was working with. But he then changed that as the game continued on to actually get more mature people in Shan and Moana and things like that. Moana probably just has a more mature head on his shoulders. She comes across as being a bit more mature in that sense, but it is quite interesting. You mentioned that you were going to say something on Dave as well, and I kind of interrupted you there.
So why did they not get rid of him though? Like seriously, I mean, why? It's just it was. I was watching it going, like, what's happening? So yeah, it was very bizarre, but good on him. Good on him for winning. He's a very deserving winner.
Is there anybody else that played with you in your season that you would love to see come back for a second chance? And, obviously, Janine, I'm assuming people that you work quite closely with, but is there somebody that is unexpected that you potentially would love to have an opportunity to go out there and play the game again that maybe didn't get the chance to fully show what they're capable of?
Baden, I think. I think Baden could do a Cochrane. I really do. Baden has a great understanding of the game. They weren't very nice to him in the edit of the tribal council because he performed way better than they showed. But as talking to Baden now, he sees the flaws in his game and he sees the strengths. And I honestly think he could go out and do really, really well. So I'd love to see Baden have another shot.
Now, one of the things about Australian Survivor that always stands out to me, and it's something that I really love about watching Australian Survivor, is that in general, you guys seem to have a lot more fun out there. It seems to be a lot more lighthearted. There's a lot of banter between challenges and things like that that all of us love to see in the international community that watch the show. Have you stayed in contact with people after the show? Does that camaraderie still exist after the show is done? And who are the people that you're most in touch with still?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, that whole first 6 alliance of us, that really fun alliance of Ross, Abby, Dave, Luke, Janine, and myself, that's a nice little bonded group that I think that little bond will never go away. I still talk to Ross. I obviously still very, very close with Janine. Dave, I'm close with. And Harry and I stayed really tight. And Baden just moved to Melbourne, so we're going to go out and get something to eat. So nice. I really want to see Simon again because I haven't seen Simon for a while. But yeah, it's definitely that little gang. And Toki and I catch up every now and then on FaceTime.
Oh, nice. And I was going to ask as well, is there an opportunity in the future that you would consider ever coming back? I think that there's a few people that have said probably that I've spoken to, like Harry, that said he doesn't know if Pierre will ever want to come back. But would you consider it? And what would be the sort of the sort of circumstance that would make you want to come back? Because I know to come back for a normal all-star season, I think you made the right call not to come back on that type of a season. We saw what happened to Jericho and Shane. It doesn't take away from them being great winners in their own right. It's just if you're 2 winners going back in a season full of people that have never done it, then people are going to gun for you. And I take my hat off. I think that someone that deserves more credit as well as Shan for being able to get there twice. I think that's an amazing feat. Obviously she went up against Dave that just played a phenomenal game that season, but I really rate her highly as a player to be able to get there twice as well. But is there a sort of circumstance or an opportunity that you would think, okay, maybe in this circumstance I would do it again?
Firstly, just quickly props to Shan. Yeah, definitely. And you know what, Shan is, you should talk to Shan because she's actually one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. And we've had a chat before and we have both said that the reason we think we got so far is because we moved around a lot as kids. And so when you move around a lot as a kid, you learn to have that survival instinct and to be a chameleon and learn to fit in at any cost. And so I think that's definitely something that we both think helped us. But going back, my face fell off, so that wasn't great. I got a full-on autoimmune disease out there from all the stress and everything. So on my face, and I had to have a lot of treatment to sort of make myself feel, back to normal. I don't know. I wonder because I think I won. And so if I go out, I've only got something to lose. I'm not sure. I'd love to be Sandra. Would anyone fall for my shit again? I don't know. Maybe if they offered me $500,000 to go out and play and then I just acted like a massive dickhead and got voted out first time I can. But I don't know. I don't think so. Mostly because of my the physical reaction that I had, but never say never. You never know. I would love to,
I was going to say the game plan's out there from the only other two-time player to ever do it, So what you need to do is go back on an all-star season, like just a normal one. Go out there like a maniac and go look for an idol, maybe build a spy bunker, get voted out first, and then come back for the all-winners season in Australia and win that one.
Yeah, I could try that. I don't know. We'll see. I definitely... I still get that sort of thing when it rains and I go, thank God I've got a roof over my head. So I'm getting old too. It's really hard I'm short. If you're short, it's very hard to be good in those team challenges. So the second half of the game for me is a breeze. The first half of the game for me is it's just an incessant torture because I'm just not that. I don't have I'd have to really work out and maybe grow my legs.
I was going to say with the Australian Survivor, it is very unique in the sense that it's got some of the most physical challenges of any. Like if you watch Survivor South Africa, it's a lot more closer to the US. There's a lot more puzzles. There are some obstacle courses, but I mean, some of the challenges, like I'll always remember the one that, like two of them, well, the one that Ross ended up getting injured in, which was an absolute freak accident. And obviously, again, a physical sort of challenge where even you struggle quite a lot because of your length. You struggle to jump between those different stumps when you were out there. And then the other one was the one where you guys were in the mud and you physically had to move this massive boulder that I looked at it and I was just like, this looks like absolute insanity to me. Did anybody test this beforehand? Because this is like an accident waiting to happen for people being out there. Hats off to you for being someone that wasn't your strength in the game, but you were able to get through to the merge, which is where it sort of came into play. But you played probably one of the most difficult Survivor seasons for someone of your build. And if it's not your strength to be like, I mean, if Sandra went out there to play in a season in Australia, I think she would also struggle in that first part, even more so compared to like a US Survivor. Another question that I've got for you is, I know you've got it there in the background. Do you have any memorabilia from playing the show that you could show the fans?
Yes, I have it's falling apart. I have my final tribal council torch. Let's see if I can.
Nice.
So I have my final tribal council torch, which I was very lucky to get at an auction. It is falling apart because it does sit outside for a long time. And I will say to the fans, it's really bloody heavy. Like it's really, really heavy. So you have to walk the tribal council through all this mud and through all this sand, and you don't have any strength because you're hungry, and you have to carry these babies, and they're really full on. But I'm pretty excited that this is the one that never got snuffed.
Yeah, no, it's amazing that you've got that there. And also I was going to ask you, like, how many times do you do that walk? Because I've heard from some survivors, like if they don't get the right take, then you have to go back and do the walk into the tribal council again. Obviously, you're used to being on a set and being in front of the cameras, but I'm assuming if you don't have a lot of food in your stomach, and you guys, and this is another thing we haven't touched on. Like, I mean, when you watch US Survivor, it's 39 days. It might be 29 days now moving forward if you believe rumors that are out there.
Yeah.
So what's that like, being out there for 50 days?
I mean, 50 days is so intense because you get to 39 and you're like, this is America. I'd be going home soon. I've still got like so much more. But you do the things that will torture you when you play Survivor in Australia is one more time for the drone. They scream that out so you do the walk. And then one more time for the drone. You're like, and you're walking through that wet sand. One more time. And the other one is you sit there and you wait at the challenge. And I'm shocking that just water stuff isn't good for me. And you sit there and you wait and you think, please, what's the challenge going to be? And then they go, water shoes, guys. And you had to put your water shoes on and then a water challenge. And that was the one where we go, no. Or you drive in and you'd peek out, they blindfold you and you'd peek out and you'd see that massive Tower of Terror. And Abby was really scared of heights as well. And she'd go, oh my God, it's Tower of Terror again. So that was the stuff that really, really gets you. But yeah, one more time for the drone. I think you do it maybe, or on a good day, you do it twice. On a bad day, you do it 4 times.
Wow. Now, as someone that's won the show, in Australian Survivor, which only a few people have done, what is your sort of tips out there for any new players in Australia? that are thinking about playing the show, and even in the world, I guess that the format of the show, there's different days, different types of challenges out there, but the core of what the game is about is still the same thing. What would you sort of give as tips and advice if you had, Dave out there again asking you, the new Dave that would go on the show to play the show, what would you WhatsApp this person to say, this is what you need to look out for when you go out there and play the game?
Well, people have been WhatsApping me about what to pack, but they're playing in Australia, and I'm like, I played in Fiji, I don't know. So I would say...
Can we touch on that? Can we touch on that for 1 second? Because I've noticed that with the Australian Survivor, that it does look like you've got more than one set of clothes while you're out there. Is that correct? Or do you go on with one set of clothes and that is pretty much it? Because I do notice that in the US, that's not the case. And in Survivor South Africa, you've normally got just whatever you've got. What is that process like for you going on Australian Survivor?
So, I mean, I'm a dumbass, and I decided that I wanted to look cute and didn't think about being warm. So don't do that. You get what you're wearing on the day, and then you get 5 extra items. So 5 extra items might be a jumper, thongs or that kind of thing, underwear. Bra and undies counts as one, but we end up accumulating clothes because if people get blindsided, sometimes they'll leave their stuff on the... I know when Nova got blindsided and I hadn't packed good pants and I saw her leave her pants on the line, you get to keep whatever people leave back at camp. So we do I ended up, when Ross left, he gave me his jumper to keep warm. So stuff like that happens. But yeah, it's just what you're wearing on the day and then five extra items.
Okay, sorry for interrupting your flow there. By the way, you guys deserve it. If you're out there for 50 days, you might as well get some more clothes to wear compared to other seasons that are doing it for half the time. So you were going to talk about the tips you would give someone that goes out there to play the game and potentially to do well.
I'd say do what Janine did and pack merino wool, because merino wool dries really quickly. So the problem with a lot of the clothing is that it rains for days, or you're hanging your clothes near the ocean and it just doesn't dry. So I'd pack merino wool. I'd do some bloody arm weights if you're doing Australian Survivor, because I did lots of yoga, running, diving from high diving boards because of my fear of heights. But what I should have done is lots of F45, that kind of short burst stuff. Everything I trained for was endurance, which did me good stead in the second half, but didn't work in the first half. And then I'd say just think about the person that you are most like in personality that's played the game and won. So, there's a lot of pressure on everyone to play an alpha game or a crazy game but what you need to do is just be really truthful about yourself. Like, how do you usually fit into groups? Where are you going to sit? And then find a winner who's been on that path and then watch their season and then read how they got there. Because I think you can sort of do two things. You can go out and make great TV, or you can be laser focused on winning. And sometimes those two things can coexist and sometimes they can't. So I really stupidly didn't think about TV. I was so laser focused on winning. That's all I thought about. I didn't think about, and I think weirdly with my edit sometimes, because I'm pretty low key. I think that, they would ask me a lot in the interviews, talk up your game. And I think in the edit, to justify my win, their idea was that I sort of needed to talk about myself in like, I'm going to do this in sort of this cutthroat way, which sort of reads quite odd, I think, when you watch it back, because it doesn't really work with who I am in camp. But yeah, I'd say, look, just know who you are and really work out how you're going to fit, and then either find someone strong to hide behind, or find someone, one thing Luke did that they didn't really show, which was very, very clever, was he find someone who's not as strong a player to be your eyes and ears and your best friend. So he had Baden. So the reason, sometimes you would see us target Baden is because we could not get Luke while Baden was around, because Baden was his protector, which is another really good thing. So I just think find one person who's going to fit into your vibe, that if people are going to come for you, they're going to come for them first. And I mean, we all love Luke, but if there's someone with a really good backstory and you think he's going to be a fan favorite, vote him out early so you don't cop any shit.
If you've got a very good backstory, don't tell anybody about it. That's the other thing. And the big thing that I've taken from this as well is forget talking to Tony Vlachos. I would love to play like him. I know I couldn't play like him. I would have to ask Adam Jumba for Aris's phone number, because I think I'd probably be the closest to Aris of all the players that have actually played it.
The thing about those Tony games is, yes, they're good, and I'll probably make myself unpopular, but Tony had to immunity his way to the end, and that's a risk. You have to, or a ban, you have to immunity, or you have to idle your way to the end, and that's a way to play, but it's a really risky way to play. So in some sense, every Survivor winner got some luck. Like, I definitely got luck at Tribe Swap. But you got to get, if you're going to play a huge game, you got to get that luck, and you got to win those immunities to get to the end, because people see it and they want to get you out.
100%.
So I'm not saying Tony's overrated, because Tony's amazing TV, but I think that if he hadn't won immunity, he would have gone.
No, 100%. And the last question for you, is there anything that you would have loved for me to have asked that I didn't ask in this interview? Any extra tidbits you'd love to talk about on the show?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Not really. I just think
what was your proudest moment? What was your proudest moment outside of what we saw potentially on the TV? Was there anything that you were really proud of being able to do while you were out there that maybe even didn't make the show?
There was this challenge called when we had to run and jump and grab pegs, and it was obviously really hard for me because I'm small, and I think they showed me doing it 2 times, but I did it. I don't know. I hate falling. I hate heights. I probably did it 20 times minimum. And wow. I was proud of myself for just not breaking down and just keeping on trying. And I eventually got it. And that was honestly it sounds really silly, but it was one of the proudest moments for me on the show, because I really pushed through something that I'm completely terrified of. And I hated it every time. And kudos to my tribe who were pushing me on. And I guess also I'm proud of the relationship that Janine and I had. I wasn't expecting that, but I was proud that I had one relationship that we always talk about, that we were each other's moral compass, because we could do anything, but you knew that you had that real love and that real relationship. And I'm proud of the fact that no matter what came up, I really wouldn't have rolled her. I mean, if I'd voted her out, I would have told her. I just think that, I was never going to turn on that. Our relationship almost became bigger than the show, which I think is a really nice thing.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Pia, it's been great having you on the show, and to sort of, turn the clock back 2 years ago to when you actually played the show, probably even longer than that when you were actually on the show filming it. But it's great to talk to you about it. And you've given us a lot of insights and tidbits that, were invaluable, because fans love to hear about the things that we saw on the show, the things that we didn't see on the show. And I think from my end that you're an extremely worthy winner. I don't think that you should ever worry about rankings. I know we as fans love to do rankings, but who cares if you've won the show? Even if you're Chris Underwood, who had to go to Exile, or Redemption and then come back to win the show, he still won the show. He's got $1 million in his bank that you don't have at the end of the day. So, even if you're in the US, you get that extra money as well. It's been great talking to you, Pierre. If you can hang on for 1 second, I'm just going to close this off, end the broadcast, and tell you how I'm going to share the link with you as well. Guys, if you enjoyed this content, if you enjoyed these interviews that we're doing currently, we are working on getting more of the Australian survivors on the show, as well as some of the South African survivors. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We are closing in on 600 subscribers. And I'm thinking of doing a special event for when we get to 1,000 subscribers as well, which I'm talking to Adam Jumba with as well. Tomorrow night, we will be back to do Survivor Trivia with everybody. All the podcasters on Reality Pop will be in it, and I will be hosting it. They didn't want me to go out there and compete because they knew I would win it, so I am just hosting it this time around. But I look forward to welcoming you guys live while we go live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over in the US. It's been great having you on the show, Pierre. Thanks.